Hello, my name is Lauren, and I hope this video finds you well. Today I'm going to be talking about a very intriguing topic, and you may have guessed it already by the picture present on the screen, but it's reproductive anatomy, and more specifically, in this case, female reproductive anatomy. And I'll be doing a video on the male as well if you're interested. But reproduction was one of my very favorite topics in medical school, and female reproductive anatomy is actually a very important subject because not only does it affect women's health, but it also affects embryology and fetal growth as well as neonatal medicine, so it's a very important topic. So to start, on your screen you'll see I already drew a cross-sectional picture of a couple of the structures we're going to be talking about today, most notably the uterus here and then the vaginal canal here. And the reason I put this down is not the fastest artist. I wanted us to have a framework to work off of. And I wanted to do a cross-sectional view because I think it gives us a nice view of the anatomy. But I wanted to make sure that you guys realized it was a cross-sectional view because a lot of things in reproductive anatomy, as well as other branches of anatomy, are paired structures, meaning that for everyone on this side of the body, there's one on the opposite side of the body. And that's going to be true for all the structures I'm going to draw today. There's only one uterus and only one vagina, but otherwise, everything that I'm going to draw today is going to be paired. So I want you to remember that and sort of keep it in your mind's eye when you're thinking about this anatomy. So in approaching this topic, I like to take a very logical, stepwise approach, in that I like to start from the female gonad, which is the ovary, and work my way through the system all the way out to the external genitalia. And I feel that this is helpful because then instead of trying to recall a bunch of facts that are just all jumbled in your head, you can have a sequence, sort of stepwise thought process, and when you work out a question, you can sort of go from step A to B to C, and you don't have to sort of just grab at different ideas. So with that being said, I am going to start from the top here and draw the female gonad, which is the ovary. And as I said before, it's a paired structure, so there is one on each side. They're about the size of an almond, and they sit within the female pelvis, sort of suspended in a big ligament called the broad ligament. Now the ovary is very interesting because when a baby girl is born, she's born with about 1 million egg cells, or oocytes. So let me write that down. And that's all that she's ever going to have. So women don't keep on producing egg cells throughout their lives in a way similar to the way that men produce sperm. So these oocytes are gradually going to be lost throughout the years, and that's why ultimately women end up going through menopause, and that's when they basically run out of these egg cells and don't have any more left. And unlike men who can just go on producing sperm, women don't go on producing eggs, and so that's why they have menopause and men don't. So the next structure we're going to draw here is going to come off the uterus and go towards our ovary over here. And this is called the uterine tube. The uterine tube is also known by a couple different names. Some textbooks it's called the oviduct, ova meaning egg, and duct obviously meaning tube or duct, and so it really means egg duct. Or some of you may have heard it called the fallopian tube, which was named after a 16th century Italian anatomist who described it. But in any case, I'm going to call it the uterine tube. And it ends in this little projection here, with all these finger-like projections out toward the ovary and a hole in the middle. And I'm going to sort of blow it up and draw it from face on here. So here's the hole, and that's called the abdominal ostium. And then all these little finger-like projections around it, these are known as fimbriae. And the fimbriae are really going to help guide the egg, when it's expelled from the ovary into the uterine tube through the hole that I'm going to label here, which is the abdominal ostium. And once the egg is within the uterine tube, it's going to sort of guide it down until it ultimately gets into the uterus. Grab a different color here for the uterus. And we already pointed this out, but this is the uterus. It's a large, very muscular structure. And this is where the egg is going to implant if it's properly fertilized. And this is where a fetus would grow and eventually mature within a woman if she was pregnant. So the uterus here, let me write uterus down for you. But the uterus can be divided in sort of 3 different parts. The first part is the very top, And it's sort of from between where the tube's attached to the very top, and that part is called the fundus of the uterus. And then the part all the way until about here, this is known as the body of the uterus. And the fundus and the body are lined by endometrium, and the endometrium is where the egg is going to implant if pregnant, or else this is the lining that gets sloughed off during the menstrual cycle of a female if she's not pregnant. So it's the body and the fundus. And the last part down here is the cervix, and the cervix is a cylindrical, narrow muscular segment that protrudes down here into the vagina, and it has an opening, as you can see by this little white line here, called the external os. And that is how the uterus communicates with the vagina, through the external os. And the cervix and the external os, this is the part that's actually going to get sampled when a gynecologist takes a pap smear, or a family doctor takes a pap smear. That's the tissue that they're trying to get cells from to check for any atypical cells that might indicate cervical cancer and things like that. So this is the part of the anatomy that we're talking about. After the cervix, we have this structure, which I already told you before is the vagina. The vagina, of course, has some very important functions. It functions as the birth canal, and it also has a very important role in sexual intercourse as well. But at the very end, where it meets the cervix, it sort of expands and comes up around the sides, as you can see here and over here. And those are called fornixes. I wanted to point that out to you. The fornix. And then you have here the vaginal canal, and ultimately it's going to exit the body at the vestibule. And the vestibule is the opening where the vagina and the urinary system are going to exit the body. So that's the vagina. Let me grab our next color here. We're going to talk about some of the external structures of the female reproductive system. So on either side of the vestibule there are these cutaneous folds. And the first one, that's most close in proximity just around the vestibule, is called the labia minora. Let me write that there, labia minora. And then there's a larger cutaneous fold that occurs just outside of that one, and this is the labia majora. So you can remember minora and majora, or major and minor. These are just cutaneous folds that occur in the external genitalia. And also associated with the vestibule are a paired set of glands, one on each side, so I'll draw one for you here. These are known as the greater vestibular glands, or you may also hear them referred to as the Bartholin's glands. And the greater vestibular glands are important because they secrete a mucus when the female becomes aroused that helps to lubricate the opening of the vaginal canal. So they're important glands, again, one on each side. Now the final structure we're going to talk about as part of the external genitalia occurs here up at the apex, and this is not a paired structure. There's only one of these, and this is the clitoris. And the clitoris is the female erectile tissue, and it sits beneath another one of those cutaneous flaps. And the word clitoris actually means that which is concealed, and it's very appropriately named because it is concealed within that sort of cutaneous flap. So now we have completed our way all the way from the ovary out to the external genitalia, and I hope this information was very interesting and very helpful to you, and that you'll go check out the male video as well if you're interested about those structures. So thank you very much for listening.